Yo, what is up, headhunters and executive recruiters? This is your boy, DSP, David Stephen Patterson. And today I'm here to kick you the real deal. Or in other words, I've got a rant. Now, this rant comes from a post I saw last night in the Headhunter and Executive Recruiter community, our group on Facebook, also affectionately known as hashtag the HERC. We have about 6,000 recruiters, largely headhunters, executive recruiters, agency recruiters, etc. I'll put the link down in the comments below if you want to join. It's an awesome group. But the point is, one of our esteemed recruiters posted this screenshot from a LinkedIn post last night and said, hey, what are your thoughts on this, guys? And it got a ton of response. Mostly a lot of people laughing or in a bit of disbelief. You see, here's the thing. This post was from what's called a rec-to-rec recruiter. Now, for those of you who don't know what rec-to-rec is, a rec-to-rec recruiter simply means a recruiter who recruits other recruiters for recruiting companies. It's a big thing nowadays. It's actually a big burgeoning market, but it's also kind of like recruitment Inception, if you've ever seen the movie Inception. Anyway, back on task here. So this person posted this as basically a warning against going independent. So look, either you stay employed or you'll probably fail in starting your own firm. Okay, so I'm going to paraphrase this. I don't want to throw anybody under the bus necessarily, because I really don't like that style of social media engagement. But I'm going to paraphrase this as much as I can. So basically, she said to all recruiters who are having good years, here are some reasons why it's better to stay employed instead of becoming your own recruitment boss. First reason was building business from scratch is something that you probably haven't done before. Right? And if you can't consistently produce $500,000 in direct billings, then running a firm poses a lot of risk because you're trying to scale, you're trying to teach, and then of course she rolls into reason number two, which was your job becomes non-billing eventually. You have to train, hire, do website development, marketing, strategy, finance, legal, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then and so she basically was saying that, and if you do this and you don't have a low cost of living, you're kind of screwed. So it's better to remain employed instead. Now, this is insane, okay? Because here this person presents what's called, it's a logical fallacy. So thank you, that college course I took in logic back in college. It's called a false dichotomy, right? Also known as a false binary. Some people call it a false dilemma, whatever you want to call it. All it is, it's a misleading argument that sounds logical on its face, but what it does, it presents two options as the only two options, black or white. You're either with me or against me, right? Either you believe in, either you're a good guy or a bad guy, okay? Either you're employed, or if you start your own firm, you got to scale it up, hire a bunch of people, train them, figure out the IT side, figure out the legal side, yada, 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 okay? So, right, that's a false dichotomy. That's not the case. There are hundreds, well, actually thousands, really, of independent recruiters that are quite successful, that do quite well, that never started business before, that would respectfully disagree, including this one right here, right? So let's kind of break this down here a bit, because granted, you should know the risks when you start a business, of course, right? And if you want to scale up a multi-person firm, yes, it will take you away through your desk to a certain degree. Although, having said that, I know a lot of billers who run multi-desk firms that still have quite healthy books of business. So again, it's not an either or situation. But even barring that, let's say you decide that, look, running a multi-person firm isn't for me, but you know what? I don't like having a boss. I like having freedom. I like traveling around or doing whatever I want to do. And I don't like giving the house, 60% of my billings, okay? Now, for some people like to remain employed, and that's certainly fine. Maybe you like your company's brand, maybe you like being part of that team environment and having that energy. That's fantastic. Some people really like that, okay? But some people have that itch in the back of their head when their very first invoice, they're looking at that thinking, man, you know what? I didn't really get a lot from my firm. There's really not a brand to speak of here. I got the client, I got the can, I did the whole thing myself. I could do this myself. Why am I giving we think that. A lot of recruiters think that, right? So many of us, I did. So I have a saying that I like to say quite often. It's you don't learn how to start a business you don't start a business by starting a business. You'll learn how to start a business by starting a business. Most entrepreneurs don't go into business knowing how to start a business. There's actually a false belief. It's actually a big misconception, right? And I get a lot of flack for this. People say, oh, you need to know how to start a business. You need to have done this. No, you don't. No, you don't. You're giving people reasons why not to go do it. Dude, if you go do it and you fail, you learn and you can start over. I've seen people start over at 25, 35. Yes, you need to realize sometimes you have a family, you have responsibilities. I get that. But at the end of the day, at least, and this is my personality, I really truly believe that oftentimes it's better, not for everybody, but you can't be afraid to jump off that cliff and build the airplane on the way down. Here's how I started my business, and this will give you some context. I went independent in 2014. Now, when I first started staffing, it was working for Labor Radio. I was doing temporary day labor staffing, right? You won't even see it on my LinkedIn. Did it for maybe a year or two, and then went to Kelly Services, did some staffing of a call center, then worked for MRI, Management Recruiters, and recruited insurance underwriters for a couple years and did quite well, okay? But again, I had that itch. And unfortunately, I didn't have any good mentors. And so I got lost in this analysis paralysis fear. So for the last 6 months of my tenure at MRI, my production slipped because I was constantly just worried and thinking and trying to plan and I stopped producing, and of course my billing suffered, and I burned through all my cash reserves. So when I started, I had Jack. I had very little money. I had $100 used laptop, an inkjet printer, and I had a phone. That was it. At the time, we didn't have LinkedIn. That wasn't a thing, right? So we didn't have LinkedIn. I didn't have a job board. And I went into SAP, which is a completely different industry. So I knew nobody. I had literally a phone. That's it. We cold called. I didn't know who to call. I had to figure it out, and we did it. But you know what? There's nothing more motivating than a gun to the head. So I went to town, and I worked my ass off. And here's my story. Sometimes the universe says, maybe you shouldn't do this, right? I'm not a big believer in that woo-woo kind of stuff, right? I'm a big believer that sometimes the universe gives you shit. And if you want to eat like a king or eat like a queen, you have to be first willing to eat shit, because people most times are not willing to eat said shit, okay? So for me, my first 6 months, I went 6 months where I had 9 turndowns, okay? I was running out of money. I was actually out of money. I had to hide my car so it wouldn't get repossessed. At one point. I was afraid I was going to get kicked out of the house I was renting. I couldn't afford ink for my inkjet printer because I didn't have an ATS. I had no database. My database was printing resumes and keeping them in folders on my desk. That was my database. And I ran out of ink. And I couldn't afford to buy ink for my inkjet printer. Right? At one point, I got a job at night selling magazine subscriptions in a call center, which I got fired from because apparently I can't sell magazine subscriptions very well. But I did that 7 to midnight to try to make some ends meet because I had the dream. And again, there's nothing more motivating than a gun to the head. And some people just play too damn safe. Too damn safe. They're going to wait until they get all their ducks in a row. So when I made my first deal, it was with a company called Valero Energy out of San Antonio. And I placed, it was an SAP FICO analyst. And it was a pretty good sized fee at the time. It was a $28,000 fee and some change. Now, that $28,000 fee Okay. I got that check because now at the time I finally closed the deal. Yes, got one. Then I had to wait for the start date. Then I had to wait 30 days after to get paid. And this is really before a lot of companies were really doing any sort of ACH. So I had to go and take this check, or wait for the check rather. I'm literally waiting by the mailbox every day, and it finally comes in like, yes. And then I realized, oh crap, I need a business bank account. Right? I wasn't prepared. Right? Now I had incorporated, when I had closed that deal, I finally incorporated. Again, I did all the things wrong. I did everything wrong except work hard. Okay? So I had incorporated maybe a month prior, what have you. And then I go into my bank that I have my personal account with, at the time, B of A. I go in there and I say, hey, I got this $28,000 check. I'm gonna open up an account and deposit that, please, thinking I'm a big baller. And of course they say, yeah, it doesn't work like that. You've got no business banking history here. You have a fresh tax ID number. We're gonna wait 2 or 3 weeks, or however long it was, for this check to clear before the funds are available. And I was running on fumes. I needed the cash right then. So I'm thinking, oh crap, what do I do? So I take that check and I say, you know what? I want to go to a check cashing place. Now here in Tampa, there's a place called Amscot, which is a check cashing place for folks who need their daily or weekly checks cashed right there on the spot. Maybe you don't have a bank. So I go there with this $28,000 and change check. And I walk up and say, can you cash this, please? And it was a shot in the dark. Now, after the shock wore off of the clerk's face, to my surprise, they actually seriously considered it. But they called Valero, accounts payable. So think about how embarrassing that was, right? To call your client's accounts payable department or having the check cashing place call to verify that, hey, is this a good check? Is this legit? Embarrassing, but I had no choice. Okay. Again, sometimes you got to eat shit to succeed. So to my surprise, they approved it. They gave me, they charged me about $500. They gave me about $10,000 in cash, and the rest was cash equivalent, like money order or cashier's check, etc. Okay. So I took that. Right. And by the way, I took that out of the bank. I was scared because this is in a bad part of town. And it wasn't like I was in a back room somewhere where no one sees me. There are a lot of people milling around getting their daily checks. Not a very good part of town. And here's this kid putting stacks of $100 bills in his pocket with money orders, cashier's checks as well. And so I was sweating bullets walking out of that Amscot place. And I go back to my bank and say, hey, do you take cash and money orders? And I threw that down there. Can I open up a damn bank account, please? And I did it. And that was my first deal. And so when it comes right down to it, you know, I faced my fears. I jumped off the cliff and I built the airplane on the way down. Okay. So when I see nowadays, when people bitch and complain about, well, it's too hard, or it's a risk, or dude, you have LinkedIn. You can search LinkedIn for free if you have to. You have so many tools at your disposal, okay? As an independent recruiter, you can brand yourself and you can compete with the big name brands, and you can consistently win business. Okay? So you don't need to go play it safe. This playing it safe thing is a loser's game. Now, granted, for others, it's certainly fine. I get that. You want to be an employee, fine. Some people are happy building $500,000 a year or $1 million a year and working for somebody else. But that's not security, okay? The security isn't in being employed. The security is simply in your ability to produce at will. And when you're in a position where you're not producing, for example, when I went 6 months with 9 offer turndowns, and every one was a shot to the gut. Because you expect 1 maybe, and then 2, and then 3, and then a 4, and I'm thinking, is the universe trying to tell me something? No, the universe isn't trying to tell me shit. It was just the shit that I had to eat. Now, other people have a lot easier time. Other people close their first deal, or they've got 100 grand saved up in the bank, and they start and they're good to go. They ramp right up. Okay, that's their path. It may not be your path. That wasn't my path. But those 9 offer turndowns, and that finally when Valero finally made an offer to my candidate and he accepted, that started it all. And then after that, I made another deal and another deal and another deal. And next deal, I ramp up, right? And yes, it is true that as you ramp up, it does take you away from your billings. That is something that you have to consider. But here's the thing that people don't talk about. You don't need to already be a huge biller. You don't need to have the experience. People who say that have never gone through that fire, okay? They've never gone through that fire. So the way I look at it is this. There are people out there that are smarter than you. There are people out there that are better than you, that are bigger billers than you, that have more resources than you, right? They have a bigger network than you. There are people out there that are probably better looking than you. It doesn't matter. Because if you have the one thing that nobody else can take away, and that is your sheer, unadulterated will to succeed against all odds, that is what you need. And the willingness to take risks, the willingness to eat a lot of shit. The biggest trait for success I've seen in my decade and a half of entrepreneurship is the ability to pony up, belly up to the bar, put on your napkin, take out your silverware, get a plate of shit in front of you, and just sit down and eat. And the people who aren't willing to do that are the ones who criticize others, say, no, you shouldn't do that. No, you don't do this, right? And never do it themselves. The ones who are willing to pony up and do that and do it consistently, right? They succeed. That's why a lot of ex-military, they succeed because they've learned, especially say, if you're in the Marines or the Army, I learned it when I went through basic myself. You learn how to eat shit, right? You have to learn what they call embrace the suck. That just simply means, look, this is gonna suck, so you know what? I'm gonna embrace it. I'm gonna enjoy the suck. This is it. If I have to go through it anyway, let's enjoy it. Embrace the suck. And that's why a lot of ex-military, particularly ex-Marines especially, they may not be the smartest of the bunch. Just kidding, Marines. Not really. But some of the most successful people I know are ex-Marines because they learned that lesson early and it became a part of their psyche. And they weren't willing to take risks. They knew they could always bounce back, but they weren't willing to give up on their dream. And that's the last thing you want as a budding entrepreneur, is to look back and think, what if? What could have been, right? I failed in life many times, right? Other people have as well. But what you have to do, we have to realize, is that whenever you're starting a business, or whenever you're trying to scale up a business, or whenever you're trying to accomplish something new, you have to realize that the bigger the fire that you have to walk through, that's the bigger barrier of entry to all your competitors. It's also a big reward at the end. When you go scale that mountain and you brave the wind and the winter and the snow and the sleet and the hail and the lightning, and you brave that personal Everest of yours, and you get to the top and you plant your goddamn flag and you defend it like hell against all comers, that comes from your ability and your will to succeed. Now, one last thing I'm gonna leave you with here. I'm gonna post a couple of links down below for those folks who may want maybe a spark of inspiration. I'm a big fan of the philosophy of Stoicism, as you could probably tell. There are some books I would recommend. One is called The War of Art by Stephen Pressfield. Another one is a book by Ryan Holiday, The Obstacle is the Way. In fact, I'll also post a link to an article I have of the same name, The Obstacle is the Way. But when it comes right down to it, if there are obstacles in your way, if there's people telling you can't do it, there's people telling you, maybe you should get more experience, maybe you should wait, maybe you need to spend 5 years at a firm, you need to be doing this, you need to be doing that. No one knows but you. And there's so many negative things thrown at us, and there's a reason why people don't go in a time and a country where starting a business and succeeding has never been easier in all of human recorded history. And you still get people saying, you know what, you're probably not going to work. You should stay employed, remain a indentured servant over here. That's security. No, it's not security. Okay? So, I'm going to leave you with this. Don't be afraid to take some chances. Realize you can always start over, but don't let anybody tell you that you got to know what the hell you're doing, that you need all your ducks in a row, okay, to succeed. And with that being said, folks, that's all I have to say today. I appreciate you listening. All right, guys, bye.